Yes, so as I said, today is all about Copilot, but Cowork specifically. So we're going to take you through a practical and demo-led session today. We'll be looking at how Microsoft Copilot is evolving beyond simple prompt-based support and into something a lot deeper that can help coordinate real work across your business. So over the next hour, we'll explain how Copilot Cowork can support more complex multi-step workflows, bringing together context from emails, meetings, documents, calendars, and business processes while keeping people in control throughout. So we have, of course, our wonderful guest speaker. We've got Bharath joining us today. So I'll formally introduce you. So Bharath is the Microsoft Business Applications Business Unit Lead at Pax8. That's a long title. He's here with some deep hands-on experience with AI, cloud platforms, and automation. And today he'll be showing us how to use Copilot Cowork in your business. So really, that's enough from me for now. I'm here mostly to help you as attendees work with us on in this very interactive session. So I'm going to soon hand over to Bharath.
Great, awesome. Thanks so much for the intro, Sarah. I mean, really great to be here again, doing another session for everyone. So super glad to be here to talk about the heart of the topic with which is Microsoft Copilot Cowork. Basically what we'll be covering today is we will talk about what is Copilot Cowork. We'll spend a few minutes understanding what Cowork actually is, and then we'll be covering the primary difference between the Copilot Chat versus Cowork. When do we use both of these different systems? At what time do we need to use which one? And probably get an understanding of why it actually matters and how Cowork actually helps a knowledge-based worker or any user doing multiple tasks every day. And then we've got an interesting demo to show on how Cowork actually works, and that's probably the place where you will see on how Cowork can actually add value on our day-to-day interactions with the applications and systems. Cool. So what actually is Cowork? So Cowork is nothing but an agentic system or an agent within the M365 Copilot. So, but all that really means is, Cowork can actually help to plan a piece of work, go off and do that work and actually bring you back with a finished result. So, so Cowork is basically an agent where it does not just answer a question, but it can actually do a job for you. So I just want you to picture the Copilot app, as a really sharp assistant, sitting right behind next to you. You ask it, it answers, and then you move on. But whereas Cowork is basically a step up from that, it's more like handing a task to a capable colleague and saying, just sort that out for me, and I will check in later. There are actually three things to take away from the slide. First, Cowork is actually built for doing a real work, involving actual day-to-day graft, and not just doing demos or just retrieving the information. And second, you can actually delegate the complex long-running tasks that you do on a day-to-day basis. So these tasks can be basically jobs, that might take a fair while to complete, or basically which involves hopping across a few different tools, right? So and Cowork, just keeps chipping away in the background. It keeps running in the background while you can actually get on with something else. And finally, the third one that actually matters is you can work with Cowork with confidence. And the reason is it is similar to Copilot, and it is actually grounded in your work context, and it is powered by the large language models that are available within the Copilot system. And it actually picks and chooses the best model for whatever task that we ask it to do. And as you know, Cowork is also wired into the M365 ecosystem, which means it can access all your applications and system that you actually use on a day-to-day basis. Let's have a quick look on what actually Cowork represents for the way that we all work on every day. So this is basically the so what, what Cowork means for you on a day-to-day basis. There are basically three sort of pillars. I know there are more, but I just want to cover some of the three pillars, that might resonate with you. First one is Cowork gives the outcomes. Sorry, Cowork is an agentic system or an agent within the Copilot app, where you can actually plan a piece of work, go off and do it, and actually brings you back with a finished result. Uh, so it's not an agent where it just answers a question, so but it can actually do a job, do a task on behalf of you. And the three things to take away from the slide, Cowork is actually built for doing a real work. That involves the day-to-day graft, moving between different applications and system, and you can delegate a complex, long-running task that you do on a day-to-day basis, where these tasks can be jobs, that might take a fair while to complete, or which involves hopping across different tools, right? Switching between, say, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, and Outlook. And, Cowork is an agent that can run in the background, while you can focus on doing the other work. And the final one is, Cowork is similar to Copilot, where you can work with confidence because it is grounded in your M365 ecosystem, and it understands your work context, and it does involve the available best LLM models to sort of do the task that we ask it to do. Can you just move on to the next slide, Sarah?
Yes, absolutely. I'm here for it. Here we go.
Cool, awesome, thank you. Just in terms of what Cowork actually represents on a day-to-day basis, I just want to focus on the three pillars that actually resonate with everyone. The first one is basically the outcomes are not clicks, where you don't have to press a button or click a button yourself. Instead of pressing the buttons yourself, you describe where you want to end up with Cowork. For example, brief me for my 10 o'clock session, with my manager tomorrow. So that's all you need to tell Copilot and Cowork, and Cowork actually works out the how criteria that we need to do. The second one is, it actually surfaces your M365 data, right? So it reads across the emails, calendars, Teams, documents, and the people's directory. And the important aspect is it all happens within a single window. So you are not actually juggling between different apps or different windows to get the work done. So everything happens within the same window in terms of the work that you need to do. And the third important one is, as a user, we stay in control of what we need to do. So Cowork basically does the coordinating and the legwork, but as an individual user, or the human in the loop, it's our responsibility to review, to steer, and actually make the call at every step that Cowork actually does. I just want to give a quick example. So, say instead of spending 20 minutes, to scrambling to prepare for a Monday meeting, you just say, get me ready for Monday. And what Cowork does is, it gathers all the information across the surfaces, while, you can just go and grab a coffee on a Monday morning. So those are the three important things in terms of what Cowork represents. But I want to cover a really important topic in terms of trust, right? So because Cowork is an agent, and the moment agent comes up, and the second you start letting an agent, to act on behalf across your emails or documents, trust is the very first thing that comes on your mind. And the natural question that we all get is, hang on, is my data actually safe or not? So everything that you already trust about the M365 Copilot actually carries straight over to Cowork. So it uses the same foundation, same commitments, same controls, and it is exactly built on the same trust framework that Copilot has. And there are four things that I just want to walk through here. First, the data is secured both at rest and in transit. So whether it's sitting still or moving between the systems, the data is protected on the whole. Second, the control of your data, stays yours, where the permissions, the access rules, and all the security boundaries still apply. And Cowork can only see and touch the documents, based on the permissions that the user actually inherits. So it actually inherits the same permissions of the user when it comes to the trust and security of the data.
Yeah,
And the third
I think
important,
that's a great point, and it gives a lot of comfort to everyone. So basically, it's sort of saying that any permissions that you already have that exist in how SharePoint, for example, has been permissioned to you, that sticks with you no matter
yeah,
what. So
yeah. And the third point, which is probably an important point, which I want to cover, is Microsoft has clarified that, the data that you put within Cowork is not used to train or enrich any of the foundational models, that Copilot uses or Cowork uses, or it's not even quietly feeding off into some big models anywhere. So that's a really important thing about security, where, where it gives the comfort that your data is safe, it's secure, and all we are focusing on enhancing the productivity that we all do on a day-to-day basis. And the final point is, you are protected against the AI security and also the copyright risk, that comes along when you start using the AI. So 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 there is actually a cover that's actually built in around any of the dodgy stuff, across both the security side and the copyright side, that can happen. Can you just move on to the next
absolutely,
slide?
yeah.
Cool. Um, so one of the questions that I have been getting the most, after Cowork was launched is, when do I actually use Copilot Chat versus when do I actually use Cowork? Because both are built for different jobs and purposes. So I just want to quickly give this slide as a reference for everyone in terms of when to actually use chat and when to actually use Cowork. So Copilot Chat is your fast, secure AI for anything that you want to do, or you want to have a quick favor, right? So in terms of drafting a reply, answering something to someone, summarizing a data, or want to do a bit of research on something. So that's when you need to use the Copilot app or the Copilot Chat. Whereas Cowork is an agent that does the work involving multi-step process or multi-step jobs across your M365 applications. So, and Cowork can run on its own for minutes, hours, and it can run in the background, while you can focus on doing the important stuff. So a quick rule of thumb, if you want a quick favor, go for the chat. If you actually want a proper job that you would hand to a colleague, then that's where you need to use Cowork. Uh, and just because they really pair up really well and sits within the M365 ecosystem, I would highly recommend to think the ideas through in the chat and then hand the heavy lifting, multi-step process or multi-step job that you do every day to Cowork. Uh, Next slide, please.
Yeah, sure. Can I get a show of hands from the crowd if anyone's already discovered Cowork and is already having a little bit of a play or using it already in their day-to-day work? Yep, Steve Springle from KMT. Well, no surprise there, Steve. I'd expect you to. Are you putting your hand up saying that you do use it? Thumbs up if you're already actively using it. If Madeline McKenna from KMT, account manager, was on the call, she would definitely be thumbsing up right now because she's what I would call a super user. And if anyone really has any deep questions, Madeline probably knows. We only had a couple of people raise their hand for that. So maybe people still haven't yet discovered the beauty of Cowork. Over to you, Barath.
Oh, awesome. Before we get into the demo, this is probably the one last slide before demo, I guess. I just want to quickly show this number, and I might just slow down a bit here. If you just look at that number, that's an average knowledge worker. That's a number that an average knowledge worker switches apps, on a day-to-day basis. So that's 40 plus app switches a day. So this is based on the studies and research, that's been put out, and 40 times most of that isn't real work. It's basically just coordination or actually the busy work around the actual work. So say for example, you have something on your mind that you want to get done, and you open 5 different apps just to get the full picture. For example, you copy a number from a spreadsheet into an email. Then you check that the document, the email, and the slides all matches. So none of this is the actual job, right? And just because each one only takes a few seconds, so we all actually didn't notice. But doing it 40 times a day, every day, really adds up really fast. And there are two ways on how it can cost you. First is your focus. Every tab switch, pulls your attention away. So this is something that happens to me pretty often. I open a tab to do something else, and then I sort of deviate and end up doing something else, and I had to get back to it probably at a later time. So, and second are the mistakes. So every time you copy a number by hand, that there is a high possibility of the manual error of getting it wrong. So this is where Cowork actually helps. It takes all that coordination of your plate in terms of the fetching, the copying, the tab switching, the checking. That's exactly what Cowork is built to do. So where you get less coordination and more of the work that you can do. Um, Probably just do a quick math, right? So say you spend just half an hour on a day on this. For a lot of people it's actually more than half an hour, but on an average you spend half an hour on this. So over a week, that's almost a full day, a day every week for every person. Now probably just multiply that across a whole team. So that's actually the real capacity you get back, and that's the value that you get back in terms of when you start using the Cowork. So probably I think it's time to actually see Cowork in action, and I would probably take you through some of the examples where in the previous demo I showed a sales data where we used agent mode within the Excel to do some analysis of the data. Now what I will do is I will use a similar Excel report that sits in my OneDrive, and let's have a scenario that I work for the sales team, and on a Monday morning, I want to create a multi Excel spreadsheets and also create a presentation based on the sales data that I need to present back to my leadership.
Okay.
So let's see how actually Cowork can help me do this task without switching any of the windows. So everything happens within the same Cowork app.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this PowerPoint demonstration now, Bharath, and then you can share your screen for the demo. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So there's a few questions already coming in just while you're doing that. I'm taking a bit of a tally of them. So when we're in the demo or mid-demo, if I find that the question's right to be shared, then I'll do that, or some of them might be answered in the demo. So I'll that's why for the moment I'm not bringing them to the table, but keep them coming in though, because I'm just working my way through them.
Cool. Can everyone see my screen? A quick thumbs up.
Well, I can't yet.
I can. Okay.
All right, well, here we are.
Cool, awesome. Let's just get into it. So in terms of how you can access Cowork, just a quick disclaimer. I mean, the UI might vary for some of you. So in terms of how you can see Cowork, I'm using the preview feature. I do hear that Cowork, some of the users are still seeing Cowork within the Copilot app under the agents, and they haven't got a separate sort of a tab to switch between the chat and Cowork. So if you don't see the similar UI, the way on how you can access Cowork within Copilot app, you go under the agents and search for Cowork if it's been enabled by your IT admin. So that's how you access Cowork. But once you get into Cowork, it's pretty much the same UI that you get on what you see on the screen here. All right, so the primary difference that you can see with Cowork, you can actually start a task, right? So, but whereas when it comes to chat, you are basically starting a new chat. So, which means with Cowork, you are delegating a task, or you are making a task that you do. All right. So I've got a sample sales data that's sitting in my OneDrive. What I'm going to do is I'm going to refer that sales data by clicking on the shortcut and sales 2026.excel. So this sales data, it's a raw sales data that's sitting in my OneDrive, and I'm referring the sales data and I'm asking Cowork to do this, So what I'll do is I will just copy paste the prompt and I will just explain what I'm asking it to do. Right.
Can you also
So
put that prompt, please? I know the people are going to ask. Can you directly
yeah,
put that also in the chat so people can read along?
yeah, I will.
Thank you.
So this is a prompt I'm using. So I'm actually asking Cowork to say, can you please review and compare the sales figures in this file for 2025 and 2026? And I need you to create another Excel spreadsheet with the following details, where I want some bar charts or some line graphs or pie charts, and I will just leave that up to you. And I also need a multi-sheet Excel workbook with a breakdown of products, regions, top products, top regions, top channels, and also just anything else that you think is important from the data that you're looking at. So it's basically a raw data, and I've just asked Copilot to create some pie charts based on the product regions and explain about the top products and top regions and everything. So the expectation is for Cowork to create another spreadsheet with some graphs and pie charts and everything. So let's see what it does. So this is going to take few minutes. While Cowork works on the request, I will just go through on a step-by-step basis of what actually happens in the backend. So once you start a task in Cowork, what happens in the backend is Cowork creates a workspace on your OneDrive, which is basically a repository for each of the tasks that you create. So all the data that Cowork generates within this task gets stored into the OneDrive of within this particular workspace. Cool. So as you can see here, you can actually go through a basic, you can actually go through in detail in terms of how Cowork completes this task. So it's actually trying to find the Excel file. It says the file is not on the disk, which means it's not on my local drive. So it is going to go and fetch it from my OneDrive. And it is starting to inspect the structure and starting to read the information within Cowork. So while Cowork does this operation, let's actually go through some of the features that are available within Cowork. One of the main feature is you don't have to keep looking when Cowork does the work in the background. So you can just move on. You can start creating a new task, and you can do other activities within Cowork. And whenever Cowork completes a task, you will get a notification on the top right over here, where it displays on the task status, whether the task has been completed or it's been failed, or depending upon, the status of the task that you can actually see.
That's good
So
to know. I didn't know that actually, because it does take a little bit longer for Cowork to generate. It's doing a lot of work. It's doing much more than those quick responses. So it does sort of sit in there for a few minutes. It might feel like eternity, but it's not. But it's good to know. I didn't know that you could leave it breath and get notified. So that's
yeah,
helpful.
100%. I mean, that's the purpose of Cowork, right? So it's basically you're handing off a job to a colleague, and your colleague is going to let you know once the job is
Ooh,
done.
I love
So
those colleagues.
so you can just go back and do your other work. Um, and one of the other feature is you can look at all of your tasks that you do under the My Task list. So a new task is basically, for starting to create a new task. Under My Task is basically the history of your previous task that you have, scheduled or created with Cowork. And with Cowork, you can actually create a schedule, for a task to run say every day, every month. So as you can see here, I've got a schedule to, to do a wrap up for my end of the day on a daily basis, where I've asked Cowork to produce an end of day wrap up in terms of what has happened by reviewing my calendar events, meetings, summarize the key activities, if there are any open items that I need to handle it tomorrow. So it's gonna send me a Teams message every day, depending upon the messages, emails that I have received. So the next day, when I come in, I will be able to action those items, depending upon my needs. So that's one of the feature in terms of where, you can schedule a task within Cowork for you to run. And at the same time, you can customize Cowork, and under customize, there are two unique features within Cowork, which are basically the plugins and the skills. So skills are basically how Cowork actually, interacts with your M365 ecosystem. So there are some built-in skills within Cowork that comes with, like, PDF creations, Word creation, Excel creations, PowerPoint, calendar management. So these are basically the skills that Cowork uses in its backend to whether, generate, modify, or update basically any files or anything. Um, and in saying that, you can also upload a custom skill to Cowork, for you to use. So you can see some of the custom skills that, within Packside that's been created and published based on our usage. So this is something that, depending upon your requirements, you can create a custom skill where Cowork can use that skill to generate information or perform certain tasks for you. Cool. Let's go back and see what's Cowork is doing. All right. So Cowork has started to read the data within the Excel file. So if you look at the prompt, I've asked Cowork to review and compare the sales figures for 2025 and 2026. So I gave 2025 on an intentional basis just to show that, Cowork doesn't hallucinate any information. And that's because, the spreadsheet only contains the sales data of 2026. So you can actually see here where Cowork has explicitly said that there is no 2025 data, so a 2025 versus 2026 comparison is not possible. So you can actually see Cowork not hallucinating to give an information just because we ask it to do. So that's a real important thing of the whole, of the agentic approach, right? So this is pretty cool. I mean, there are certain AI tools where you give the same prompt, it does generate its own 2025 data where, we don't actually need a 2025 data, right? So because the file doesn't contain the 2025 year 2025 sales information. So it's awesome to see that Cowork doesn't hallucinate, it says that, it will instead compare the quarter by quarter across the 2026 and gives the trajectory between Q1 to Q4. So, and at the same time, it also says there is a no product column or no channel column. That's basically because the structure of the sales data is actually different to what we have asked Cowork to give for. So the data normally involves information of the customers' regions, but actually not the products and channels. So I think there's a question in the chat.
The few questions. Do you have time for a couple?
Yeah.
Yep, I've got one here from Janita. What is the difference between Cowork and MS automation? Do you know?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Sure. What is the difference between Cowork and MS automation, so Microsoft automation?
I haven't fully explored the MS automation, but Cowork is basically an AI agent, right? So whereas when you generically say automation, you are basically automating a step-by-step repeatable task, right? So with automation, you won't be able to say, I mean, you will be able to generate files, but you will have to go through intense development of the automation to actually get the work done for you. Whereas with Cowork being an agent, you can see there is no workflow automation that I have built manually. I'm just using the tool to actually get the task out of it, that I want to achieve.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I've got another couple that I'm sort of going to fold a couple in
So
together.
we'll just, sorry,
Well,
can you
couple of people. Oh, sorry, Brian.
Yeah. No, go for it.
A couple of people are saying if people have Copilot for Microsoft 365, does it automatically give them access to Cowork? For example, some of them are saying that they can't see it even in the agent store. Would it be that they have got limitations put in place by the administrator of their Cowork of their Copilot facility,
Yeah, that's a really good question. So Cowork was launched as a Frontier program, and
Frontier?
if your tenant has been enrolled as part of the Frontier program, you should have been getting access. If you haven't enrolled, Cowork has gone GA just last week, and there are different ways in terms of how you can enable co-work within the tenant. So you would still need to, reach out to your administrator or, someone like KMT to have them enabled for you if you haven't got co-work yet.
Yeah. Okay, great. Also, there's another question just popped in. I'm saving yours, Paul, just to the end, if you don't mind. I've got my eyes on it.
Yeah.
One other question is, can Cowork find my emails in predetermined folders based on a trigger? That would be so useful. That is a question from Karen.
That's a really good question. We'll just park it towards the end. So maybe we'll just finish off the quick demo. Just keeping in mind. So cool. So now Cowork has pretty much created a new spreadsheet for me. So as you have noticed, I haven't switched any tabs or anything, right? Everything happened within the same window. And you can actually review the spreadsheet within the same window in itself. You don't have to open a new Excel file to actually review that. Cool, there you go. So you can actually see how Cowork has created multiple sheets. So, and it has just created an overview sheet for the overview, and also it has given a quarterly trend with with the bar charts and the pie graphs. It has given me a region breakdown again, basically with the graphs, which normally the leadership team prefers the pictures always. So this is amazing. You don't have to switch between different applications. You don't have to switch between different windows. And you just referred the sales data that was sitting within your OneDrive, and you just ask Cowork to create a separate spreadsheet with some pie charts and line graphs, and to sort the information based on the customers and data. And it has very much done this. So now I have got this file created, which is amazing. But I'm heading into a leadership meeting where I want to create a presentation file based out on this data. So I'm giving another prompt to Cowork to say, create a PowerPoint presentation to present the data for the leadership team and focus on the wins first and the losses then. So let's see what Cowork comes up. So Cowork, the expectation is Cowork is going to create a PowerPoint slide for me. Again, without doing the traditional way of the file creation, right? Where you will have to normally go to PowerPoint, use a template, pick a template, and then, start thinking about the number of slides that I need to do, switch between the spreadsheet that has got the data, and then, manually insert all the graphs, all the information, and create the file. So the Cowork is exactly gonna look at this data that it has created, and it's going to create a PowerPoint file, for us to present to the leadership meeting. All right. So while Cowork does it work, do we just go back to the question, Sarah?
Yeah, sure. So let me just go back in there. Paul was going to ask about the pricing, because at the moment, what people that are already using Copilot are seeing is that it's sort of suggesting now that it's moving to a usage-based plan.
Yep.
And does this imply that there will be additional charges to use Cowork on top of the existing Copilot license? I have a little bit of an understanding around this too, if I can help, but also I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, 100%. So that's one of the recent updates that Microsoft has done. Earlier, when it was part of the Frontier program, it was available within the Copilot license, within the Copilot app. With Cowork being GA, so a tenant needs to have a usage-based plan enabled within the tenant for them to access Cowork. And in terms of how the billing works, so Cowork is built based on the number of Copilot credits. So so basically, you will have, there are a number of ways on how you can purchase the credits. So you'll have to purchase the credits, create the usage-based plan within the tenant for you to actually, make the Cowork work. So in short, yes, there is a slight additional charge, which are basically the Copilot credits that you'll have to purchase for you to use Cowork.
And so those charges are coming into effect, I believe, from July onwards.
First of July.
And Paul, do reach out to your KMT account manager too, because there are some things that we can do in the tenancy level just to make sure that there's some capping in there in place. We can put some guardrails around it so that only certain users are able to use Cowork, whether it's a prescribed amount of credits that they are given, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some boundaries that we can put on it in there for you. Okay, how's your coworker going? Do you want me to pass you another question, or are you?
No, I think it's still going through the details. It's still creating the slide. It has come back and said, it has got the narrative and the exact numbers, and it's gonna create the deck with 8 slides, highlighting the wins first, and with an executive sort of the, template or the theme that's needed to be presented. So yeah, we can just go back to the questions.
Okay, so most questions I think we're covering off. I'm now looking through, there were a few common themes around pricing. So Antonella, let me know if you need any more detail. For Cowork, can Cowork find my emails in predetermined folders? We've discussed that. Someone asked if it really is a better way to start the day rather than using an agent to kind of, that you've already made an agent asking it for certain steps to run each day. Would Cowork be a better way of kicking off your day in your mind, Barath?
100%. As I already showed, I've got a schedule that runs for me towards the end of the day, where it sort of prioritizes the task for me that I missed on the end of the day that I need to look for the day after. So yeah, 100%. I would highly recommend to use Cowork to to start your day with. Yeah, especially when you do something on a more repetitive basis, where you start your day, you check your email, you do a certain task on a repetitive basis. So that's where you would actually see the value of Cowork.
And Caroline, just to be specific, was asking around, she's been shown previously, probably by us, how to use chat and schedule a prompt that gives a wrap up of the day. So the other end of the day. So is this a more reliable way of doing it? Again, just kind of comparing to like the old way versus the new way.
That's a really, really great question from Caroline. So that's the difference between the chat versus Cowork, right? So you can very well use the chat where you can have a prompt schedule that gives you the information of the to-do list or the activities that you need to do. But again, right, Cowork is a step up, where it can do the same task for you, but it can do a little bit further, where if your task involved replying to a certain person, based on the priority, or updating a certain data, based on some source information. So it's basically a step up from actually scheduling a prompt, having a to-do list. So it's an extension of that where you use Cowork to again actually do a job for you.
Yeah, and Cowork often suggests some of those tasks that it can help you with once it's wrapped up your day too, Caroline. I'm not sure if you've had a go at it yet, but it'll often say, would you like me to draft an email, and then draft the email. It sort of prompts you to be a better person.
Yeah.
Here's what I think. Becky, I can see your Copilot's just about finished now, so I'll throw it back to you. But Becky was asking about the difference between chat and Cowork. And Becky, I think we're covering off on that during this whole demonstration, and certainly we did cover it off on it earlier. There was a slide around what kind of interactions are best placed with chat versus Cowork. So Cowork's a much more in-depth kind of platform, and Cowork's more of your quicker task-oriented chat-enabled system. So how are you going now, Barath? Are we back to the demo?
Oh, awesome. I think Cowork has done its job. So it has come back and said your leadership deck is ready, and it has saved the file onto the OneDrive. As again, right, you don't have to sit looking at Cowork doing that job for you, right? So, but if you look at the job, you can see all the files is being saved to this folder, and whenever you click this folder, it just goes to your OneDrive workspace, where you can actually find these files. So let's see what Cowork has created for us in terms of the PowerPoint presentation. Boom, there you go. So it has created a nice information of slide decks, where it highlights the total revenue, it highlights the growth, and it also shows the number of customers on the regions, which is awesome. And it also talks about the wins, because this is something which we specifically asked for, to talk about the wins at the first, where there's been an increase in growth across 3 quarters. It shows APAC is the engine, and it also highlights which customer is the breakout performer for us. And it has done a nice comparison with some graphs showing on how the revenue has fluctuated, and also the top 5 customers. So, I mean, we didn't actually specify what we need, all we just said was, I got a leadership meeting, go and create a presentation file based on the sales data. And Cowork has actually categorized the data, and it has created, it understood who the leaderships were, because it is sitting within the M365 ecosystem, and it understands the people, and it understands what they normally expect in terms of these data presentations, and it has just created these slide decks for us. And also the losses, where we actually slipped. So there was a revenue dip between the Q3 to Q4. And so these are some of the ways. And again, you've seen that I haven't switched the window. All the work is happening within Cowork, which actually saves a lot of time. So as an individual, if I have to create this presentation, I have to do the 40 plus, or probably more than 40 plus app switches to actually get the data across different places, from my email, from the Excel spreadsheets and everything. So I just want to quickly show one more thing. I have got the slide ready for the meeting, but I just want to quickly email a summary of this report to my colleague, so that he could pass on me some feedback. So I'm going to say Cowork, email the summary of the report, say to my colleague, Randy. So let's see what it does. So let's see if it actually understands who Randy in this context means, and if it can actually generate an email response that I need to send to Randy. So as you can see, yes, it's actually searching for people, Randy, here across my M365 ecosystem.
Well, it's just pulling that together. I need to give you a little bit of a timing warning. We're just about, we only have a few minutes left.
This is the last one. So okay. Maybe you do. Can we pick one more question?
Well, to be honest, I think we're up to date with questions. So if anyone has any burning questions, do send them through so that we can whip straight into them when Barath completes his Cowork task. But I think I've covered off on everyone's. I hope so.
Great. Awesome. No worries. All right. So it has said that Randy has been found. He's the strategic account manager, and it's going to write the summary of the email and send it with the report attached. So it's just drafting the summary email for Randy. One of the things that you can do is you can actually interrupt Cowork and tell Cowork what you want to do next. So, I mean, just for the sake of demo purpose, I'm actually, finishing up each task just to show you on how Cowork works. But you can actually interrupt in between to say, Cowork, do this in a different way, or you want to change something. So Cowork can actually interrupt your input that you give later on. And as you can see here, it has generated an email to Randy, and it has drafted a summary. It has attached the files that for you to review, and you can basically hit the send button, I hope. This should normally send the email back to Randy. So from this demo purpose, we have created a new Excel spreadsheet with some graphs. We have created a presentation for the leadership team that we need to present, and at the same time, we have sent an email to our colleague within all happening within the same cohort. Just one thing which I want to mention. Is the AI model that Cowork uses, right? So on the top left, you can see actually select the model that Cowork wants to use. So right now it's been set to auto, where Cowork picks the right model depending on the task it needs to do. But if there are any complex, intense tasks that you perform, so you can pick the right model for the Cowork to choose and perform the job for you. Cool. And yeah, and the email has been sent to Randy. Randy should be wondering what this email is about from me.
Hopefully. Yes.
Yeah. I think
All right.
that's all I've got for today.
Thank you for all of your work there, Bharath, and sharing all of your skills and knowledge with us. It's been very, very informative. Yes.